President Obama will address two major counterterrorism issues facing his administration in a speech set for Thursday. The president is expected to detail the legal justification for using drones as the new push to shut, as well as focus on a new push to shut down Guantanamo Bay, where now more than 100 detainees are on a hunger strike. Joining me now for our News Nation political panel, Vince Warren, executive director for the Center for Constitutional Rights, which represents Guantanamo prisoners. Also, Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas, and Washington Post deputy national editor Ann Kornbluth. Thank you all for joining us. Chris, I'd like to start off with you first. The Daily Beast is reporting that, according to three administration sources, the president's sudden rhetorical plunge back into Guantanamo Bay reflects a calculated and highly personal decision, one born by both frustration at his team and a measure of personal regret about his failure to solve the problem. So in a sense, they're saying that sources tell them that it's personal for the president. He wants back at it, as he said, for personal reasons, based on a promise and pledge that he made while campaigning.
Well, I think the president made a very clear commitment and pledge that he was going to close Guantanamo. I mean, the problem I think that this faces is what we've seen anytime these issues erupt. It becomes so political so fast. The Republicans are going to pounce on this at any suggestion that you're going to close Guantanamo, putting aside that it doesn't seem to be working as it is, let alone the cost. You can't move them, these suspects. You can't move them back to the United States. You can't put them in federal facilities. What are you supposed to do? So I think the president's going to have, it's going to be a tough line for him to walk on this in order to avoid the political uproar the Republicans are going to bring. I'm not sure he can avoid that, to be honest.
And to Chris's point, though, when the president reaffirmed that he wanted to close Guantanamo Bay, he made the point, and in his words, and Guantanamo is not necessary. It doesn't keep us safe. It is expensive. It is inefficient. And he went on to talk about it being a recruitment tool for extremists. Obviously, the note about the price of it, the expense, and it not being efficient would be a play to conservatives, especially those who say their focus is budget and the deficit here, and the millions being spent to keep this facility open, afloat.
Certainly, and that's one argument he made. There are lots of other important arguments that he has made in the past and can make again about the effectiveness of Guantanamo, about the fact that suspects can be tried in federal court just as effectively. But nothing has really changed the basic politics of this. I think Chris is right. I mean, I think it's very difficult to see what Republicans have yet been won over in recent years. If anything, he's obviously had a harder time more recently with his agenda on Capitol Hill, and the logistics and the logistical hurdles of what to actually do changes. So I think his personal commitment is obviously important, but he was committed from day one. Look, this is something he said during the campaign. It was one of his first executive orders. So beyond his own personal passion for it, I think it's hard to see what's different now. That said, if it's something he cares about, having him push for it, as with everything on his agenda, has the potential to make it actually work this time.
Well, and one thing that is different now, you have 100 of the 166 on a hunger strike, and it's been noted that if one of those individuals dies and then another, there's a greater complexity thrusted on this. So parts of it have changed, and certainly if people can't find themselves to look at the human nature part of this, back to the budget. We've talked more about the fiscal challenges now than ever before, led by the Republicans. So you do have somewhat of a nuanced dynamic that's changed.
Well, and it's an interesting gambit by the president to see whether the budget could trump what will be described as national security concerns. I think the moral case for closing Guantanamo Bay has been made over and over again by the administration and by the president personally. Obviously, if suspects do start to die from hunger strike over time, that would be different, although they are, of course, force-fed when they don't eat. So being on hunger strike comes at its own cost, but I think it would be surprising to see deaths out of there. But the moral case so far that he has made hasn't been as effective as the other side's argument about national security. And look, the prisoners who leave there have to go somewhere. They have to go into someone's congressional district, into someone's state. And that has been very hard for even Democrats to stomach so far.
Right. And Vince, let me bring you in, because to Ann's point, you've got an issue. If you shut down the facility, what do? You transfer some of them to jails in other countries, prosecute some, and moving some still indefinitely, perhaps even to U.S. prisons. So those are the options there. But the reality of the situation is one that hits you personally as having represented detainees there. Are you at all hopeful, or at least I should ask, what do you hope to hear on Thursday from the president specifically?
Well, this is a huge human rights violation in addition to all of the other arguments that we've heard. And it's true that the politics haven't changed, but what's very important is that the president seems to have changed. And that's the thing we've been hoping for a very long time.
Changed in what way? Because to Ann's point, this was a pledge he made. He never wavered or changed from his commitment. It was the politics and what Democrats call the obstruction by Republicans, and maybe even some Democrats who are uncertain as to what to do next if you shut down Gitmo.
Well, the change is from talking about what you're going to do to actually doing something. And so what we expect and what we hope from this speech is that the president, in addition to the lofty and very compelling rhetoric, is going to move people. He's going to move the issues. And here's some of the things that he can do. Number one, the president himself has issued a ban on transfers to Yemen. That's the largest group that's able to be transferred safely, and he can remove that immediately without any help, without any congressional help. He can also appoint people to this Secretary of State's office to be able to move this process forward. And I think most importantly and compellingly, that he can get the Pentagon to issue waivers and to move some of the men that everybody thinks can be released to be released immediately.
Well, I want to ask you about something else in this Daily Beast article. It says John Kelly, the Marine general overseeing Guantanamo Bay, is head of the Southern Command. In their words, of course, made this stunning admission back on March 20th when we heard the president kind of say he's ready to go at it again. Basically, according to the reports and what Kelly said, is that these detainees were devastated when President Obama backed off at least their perception of closing the facility, and that prompted the detainees to go on this hunger strike because for some reason they still believed that the president would work out a solution where they would perhaps still be in prison, but not at Guantanamo Bay.
The folks at Guantanamo, the men, are absolutely devastated. That's exactly why they've gone on this hunger strike. And after 11 years of expecting that the government is going to do something, they did the only thing that's left to them, which is to starve their own bodies to get attention and to be able to move this process forward. But President Obama, and they're right to expect President Obama to do something. This is a leadership moment for him. The politics haven't changed, but President Obama can take steps on his own in order to move these things forward. And I think the most important piece is thinking about this as a human rights violation and not a political partisan situation.
But in reality, do you believe that most Americans look at it as a human rights issue, in that I think when you look at the 166, yes, some of those men are there without any evidence, with witnesses or neighbors saying that this individual was linked to al-Qaeda with no proof at all. But you have many people who believe that there must be some factor of guilt involved. So it is difficult, I think, for average people to see that. However, what to do with these men is a legitimate question. If not freeing them, then what?
Well, the question about how to think about this problem, most Americans understanding that there are 86 men in Guantanamo that unanimously all branches of government had said do not pose a danger to national security and can be released, but understanding that those men are here in Guantanamo, not being released, no trial, sitting and waiting for Congress to do something, most people would understand that that's a huge problem.
But we've known those facts, and we don't see protests. You know, you don't see widespread, not that you would think when you hear those facts, online, social media demanding that these people who have no evidence against them at least be released.
Well, that's true. We don't have a lot of protests in the street, but people also, I think, do understand fundamental fairness, and they understand how our system is supposed to work. And I don't think anybody would have a problem with people who are factually innocent or who are not dangerous either getting released or going to trial. Those are the two options that we have, and the president has all of the release options in his hands.
Vince, thank you very much. Ann, I appreciate you as well. And of course, Chris, it's always great to see you. Thank you all three for participating. We hope to talk to you on Thursday after the speech.